Alright, what's going on, guys? It's Mike, and today I wanted to cook up a little video about my personal thoughts of M Plus right now and just the state of Mythic Plus in general, and kind of the change that I think Mythic Plus needs to have and kind of deserves to have. So, I want to start off by talking about the whole key system. I think the key system is a little bit outdated and a little bit cooked. I don't think that the Resil system is enough to actually advise people or motivate people to actually want to play Mythic Plus more than they do, especially when 3K IO is kind of easy to get, and I think people, once they get them out, are just kind of just like, all right, well, that's enough, and then they might do their 12 keys for Vault, and maybe not even do those, maybe do some 10s with guildies and whatnot, if they're not avid Mythic Plus pushers. I think the key overall is kind of annoying. I mean, if you can look in game at any point and kind of look at groups for like 17s through 19s type of thing, and it's a small portion, and they're usually either meta comped out or fizz comped out or something of that nature, and then you're kind of fucked, right? And also you can see like the disparity of the different healers and keys, and that shit is super bad. But I think it's also because of the fact that the key system is how it is. I mean, if you're 17 Resil, but you're trying to get 18s, and you have the last 18 that you need in your bags, say it's a Priory or a Cinder Brew, and you know that you need an absolute fucking meta comp to get that key done because you do not want to deplete it and then be stuck with a 17 of that key that no one that is really valuable to you for trying to do that key is gonna be queuing up for that key, because they're queuing up for 18s or 19s, and they either have their groups or they're waiting to get a group going, and that's typically how it goes. Like, you have 3,300 guys signing up for your 18s or your 17s because that's basically what they need, right? And you're trying to find a group that is gonna want to push the 18 and or the 19 after, if you plus 2 the 17, if you have like a Motherload or a DFC. So it's like, those are the things that you're kind of waiting for, and as much as you can put that in the description, those type of people aren't going to sign up. It's just they're just going to roll the dice and try to get into your group, and then you're stuck with a sad time where you're looking for 18s. There's barely any 18s. You need that exact 118, and there's no keys for it. There's not really any 19s because mostly people are grouped up at that point. And it's just kind of a bad experience for a Mythic Pluser that, I mean, I have aspirations for title. It's probably not going to happen because I don't have a group. But, it's been fun still doing Mythic Plus. It's just the annoying part that happens. And it kind of happens between every, push time where, let's say, like the highest keys being done are a 17. And I'm at a 15 or a 16. And it's kind of like the same thing is happening over and over again until the point where you can reach that point in Mythic Plus IO score where it's like, okay, now I need a group because the keys that I need to push aren't available, and if I do it for my key, I'm not gonna get the giga players that I would like. And it's not to shit on any players. I'm not saying that I'm the best in the world because I'm not. I think it's more of like IO wise, where it's like I'm trying to find people in my range so I can push score, and maybe other people that are under can push score, but like, do I take that chance on this key that is the 18 that I need, for example, and then it gets completely fucking bricked, and now I'm sad and back at a 17 and have to go through the LFG monster again. So my cook, and to be honest, is I think the Mythic key should just be completely obliterated and disappear. I think we should move to a system that kind of got represented in the Delves and Torghast systems, where once you do, let's say example, a 10 key, you can then do an 11 key of that dungeon, right? And people might say, well, then you'll just have an inflation of IO and etc. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that IO inflation is going to be like the biggest problem in World of Warcraft. Like, I think that the more people playing the game is a good thing for Blizzard, right? So I don't know why that would be an issue. And then people might say, well, the resist system kind of gives you that, but again, what I spoke about earlier, it kind of defeats that purpose with the key, right? Um, and then for me, I think it helps the LFG people the most, right? I'm not talking about like, guys who are pushing score and you have, high IO and they're, title players and rank 1 world players. Like those guys are always going to be in those positions regardless if that key is the way you get in or if the system is changed completely to kind of represent more of a, push level up system per dungeon of the season. Like the delves or Torghast is set up where you can just go into, well, I did let's say a 18, now I can do a 19 DFC and I can just look for a group and get them in there and then we can all do it. I think that system would be a lot better, and as long as they don't cut it out where it's like, well, if the person that you're bringing hasn't done at least the 18, they can't also do the 19. I think that would be very, very dumb for them to do because then it would defeat the purpose. I think the way that that is, it's you're giving opportunity to guys who possibly could do this key, but they can't find a group to do the key or can't get into this key because it's not represented that they've done a 17. And you might say, well, people are still going to pick and choose over that, and yes, that might be true, but I think that will just, the system, the LFG system, is just going to have a lot more players in it and a lot more groups going because people aren't afraid to brick the key and then be stuck with a 16 or stuck in with a 17 Rizzo key. They can just say, okay, well, we can reset and just try again, right? And you're giving people more opportunities to improve on skill, improve in those upper tier levels of the game without having any real consequence. And I think that's what the Resil system attempted to do, but I think it kind of failed to do that with the consideration of like, well, once everyone's done that 17 or that 16, no one's going to want to go back and do it, and people are kind of stuck playing with these players that they don't necessarily want to play with, right? And have to go through the struggles of finding a decent healer or a tank that they really want, that it can do the skips in Motherload or the skips in Floodgate, whatever the case may be. And I think that kind of allows you to go through trial and error as they intended for you to do with the Rizzo system, but kind of fell short with the way that it's still centered around the key. And then if you might say, well, okay, maybe that will be too much, right? Because then if you think about it, someone can just continuously do, like, let's say this season, someone can just keep going into DFC and, saying, well, this key is pretty much the easiest, right? And that's kind of been assumed by everyone between that and Motherload, depending on what your, cup of tea is. But DFC, you could just be like, all right, well, I did the 18, now I'm gonna do the 19, now I'm gonna do the 20. And I say, and, just keep going on and just get, good IO score or inflate my IO score through that one dungeon, right? Well, there can be a twist and kind of a return of the Resil to it. Yeah, I think they could still use the Resil system with this, right? With this idea where, let's say, okay, you don't want the inflation of IO to happen, so for now on, you can, let's say, push up one level, right? So you have all 17s in all those dungeons. All right, cool. Now you can push up and do an 18, but you can't do a 19 until you have an 18 in every other dungeon. So the Resil system will kind of still be, enforced, but you still have the opportunity to, push up and continuously do these keys without having to have that physical key. Just because, again, I think that's the feel bad part of the way that the Resil system is, and I think there's no other way to really change that unless you completely try to do some whack shit with the key. Whereas I think you can just have some NPC allow you to, open up a menu and pick, all right, 17 DFC, here we go. All right, 18 DFC, here we go. And then, be able to reset and do the dungeon over and over again, just as you kind of planned with the Resil system. But I think there also needs to be some type of LFG system for Mythic Plus besides the one that we have now. I think there has to be maybe some type of clan or M plus team system and recruitment window where you're able to find teams that are looking for a healer or looking for a tank or looking for a specific DPS or etc. Just because this is one of the major playing points in your game right now, where besides raid, I think M plus is pretty much where all the player base is. And obviously the levels kind of vary, but this is a major part of your game that I think deserves to have at least that. Just because to find a group on, let's say, Raider.io, or finding people on like Warcraft logs or Guilds of WoW, like that's kind of annoying, and not every player knows about that, right? If you're talking about a wide margin of players that play Mythic Plus, not everyone knows that you can go on Raider.io and, put in an application for an M Plus team or any of that. Like, to them, it's kind of just like, oh, this is just a thing that I log in and do. And you'll be surprised, and it might sound crazy, but that is the reality of World of Warcraft. There's a lot of players that aren't, informed or care enough to be informed about those things. However, they do want to at least have an attempt to do some of these high level things, but it's hard to do that when, they don't know, the simple weak auras and things like that to get. And I don't think that M Plus should be, something that's hoarded by the high pushers. I think everyone deserves a chance at, being able to push those keys. And I don't think people get that opportunity in the game. Like, no one's just going to take a troll comp or, just to fuck around and see what happens. Just because, like, okay, I'm not going to break this key. Unless you have a, complete Brazil key that you just don't care about, you might do it. But at the end of the day, you know that you're wasting time and, probably their time. And I think it has to be done. I think a Mythic Plus, system should be implemented, and that way you're allowed to, or you're allowed to look up people. You're allowed to, look up specific classes, even specs, whatever the case may be. I think that should be on Blizzard's radar in order into implementing into the game. Just because, again, Mythic Plus is a big part of World of Warcraft, and I think it deserves that at least for, when you look at the players right now in like the 3,500 range, like they're in that dilemma where there's not that many keys at the level that they need, and there's also, they can't really find a group, so they're kind of just like, rogue one at that point. And it's like, well, what next? And that's kind of just the cycle you're stuck in. And it does feel bad, but at the same time, you still enjoy the game and you want to play the game. And I think this would very much change the way that Blizzard approaches the way that they do, dungeons at that too. Because then it's kind of like, well, maybe, we don't need as many interrupts, or we don't need as many, ups, or whatever the case may be, or skips, just because, something is insanely annoying, slash difficult, slash someone's gonna die, so you don't do X pools that maybe Blizzard wanted you to do, but then they're like, oh well, no one wants to do it, and they found a way around it, so who cares? I think that's kind of bad in a way, but part of M Plus, but at the same time, I know the players also don't love it. And I do think there should be some type of other reward besides IO score. Like, I think M Plus should have a lot more things to offer than just a score. I mean, sure, you can get a heroic piece or whatever, but even that heroic piece is not even like fully upgraded, where you have to waste Valor Stones or Crest on it, even if it's like early in the season, and you're like, oh, what the fuck? Like, even though you just did it on a 16 or 17, and someone that does it on a 12 can pretty much get that same item at the same upgrade, is kind of annoying. Just because, the content is more difficult, right? And should reward something at least, maybe not fully upgraded, but one off full, like 5 out of 6 or whatever the case may be, 7 out of 8. Just to, at least make you feel a little bit better of something you get, even though you might not need it at the end of the season. But, I don't know. I think that's kind of cringe and annoying and kind of badly put together, but I mean, it is what it is. That's something small. I think the key thing is way more important. I think the meta comp thing is getting a little bit old. Again, I'm not saying this from a perspective of like, oh, I'm this mega good player. I'm just saying this from a perspective of a dude that plays and, has fun playing, has fun pushing keys, enjoys it. But obviously I think the system and, overall the way that Blizzard sets them up has to be changed. For for it to actually feel like a better system and feel like something that every player, every ordinary player can just go into and have fun / also learn and also gain skill. I think there could be a lot more players in the upper echelons of IO if they were allowed the opportunity. But again, the depletion of key or being stuck with a key you don't want, or not having the key available in LFG. I mean, as someone that still needs an 18 priority, it's like, that key doesn't exist. And when it does exist, it's usually meta comp. And it's like, bro. And then if it's Fizz comp, it's like, they still take a Disc Priest because it's like, hey, why not? We have a Hunter for Lust. Fuck it. So, I mean, it is what it is, but I do think we do need a little bit of change. Still love M+, still love the game. Again, this is just perspective. This is just, ideas, but I want to know, does anyone else think that, M+ needs a change, or do things kind of remain the same? Was Brazil a good thing? Was Brazil a bad thing? Oh, yeah, and before that, this is the one thing I hate. You Brazil guys who are like, hey, yeah, you sign up for a key, it's an 18 or 19, it's like, yeah, Brazil, but, 200k per attempt. What the fuck are you on? Like, honestly, what are you on, bro? Like, I know you're gonna illegally throw the key, or not illegally, legally throw the key, and then ask for another 200k gold for a key that's like hard anyway, like a fucking Cinder Brewer Priory. Like, get fucking real, bro. But anyway, yeah, let me know what you guys think. It's been a nice one. I'm out. Again, I want to thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys staying this long and hearing my opinion and my perspective. If you haven't already, I really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment your thoughts. Always important to hear what you guys think. And also, be sure to check out my Twitch, twitch.tv/MikeOfficial1, live pretty much every single day. And we raid Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. It's been a good one, and thank you guys for watching. I'm out.